All right, everyone, this begins video number 3 on anxiety disorders, and we will be talking about panic disorder in just a moment. But I wanted to give you the statistic on phobias, just like I did with generalized anxiety disorder. And with phobias in a given year, 19.2 million Americans are labeled as having a phobia. And within that 19.2 million people, there is a group of people that are diagnosed with it, twice as much as another portion of the population. So, have your guesses ready? The answer is that twice as many women are diagnosed with phobias in a given year than men. Okay, moving on, we are going to talk about panic disorder. The definition of panic disorder reads that it is an extreme anxiety that manifests itself in the form of panic attacks. So let's talk about what a panic attack is. They're sudden and unexplainable attacks of anxiety. They feel like they are going to die. They have this overwhelming sense of doom. Now, they may not rationally be able to explain what is going to cause them to die, what this overwhelming sense of doom is all about, but that's what they feel like. Something horrible is going to happen to them. Some people that have later on described what it is that they were feeling during this panic attack have described that they might feel like they're being smothered, that they're not getting enough air, okay, enough oxygen. They might feel like they're choking or fainting. They might be dizzy, have nausea or chest pains, okay? They could be feeling all of these things at once. Um, Once again, it may not be rational to somebody who has never experienced a panic attack, but they feel like something horrible is going to happen to them, like they're going to die. People have described like it felt like somebody was putting a pillow over their face, or there was something as large as a car on top of them and they couldn't get enough air. Okay, and that's what it felt like while they were experiencing that panic attack. Okay, so sometimes these panic attacks, they can last a few minutes or they can last up to an hour. Either way, somewhere in between, either way, feeling that way does not feel good. Victims usually have their first attack shortly after a stressful event. That's when therapists have kind of, well, not kind of, that's when they have narrowed it down as far as when somebody experiences that panic attack. Okay, and here's a graphic that shows you physical signs of a panic attack. I'm going to move on, but go ahead and pause it if you want to look further. Okay, and so here I've just included some images that demonstrate these feelings that people experience while having that panic attack. Okay. All right, so within panic attacks, let me go to my notes here for just a moment. Okay, so panic attacks, there are 6 million people that are diagnosed with it in a given year, and there are twice as many women than men who are diagnosed with panic disorder. Okay, obsessive-compulsive disorder. Now, in kind of regular man's terms and layman's terms, out there in the world, out there in our vernacular, our everyday language, you might have heard OCD. That's where this comes from, obsessive-compulsive disorder. Now, we're going to break down the term here in our definition, okay? The definition reads that it's an anxiety-based disorder in which the person has the same thoughts over and over. So that's the obsessive part. They're constantly thinking about this thing or these one or two things. Now, at the same time, They have these compulsions, okay? These compulsions. So those are coupled with, these thoughts are coupled with repeatedly performing coping behaviors while they have that same thought that is running over and over and over again in their head. They are performing some kind of behavior. They're doing something at the same time. That is OCD, okay? So examples might be someone washing their hands 20 to 30 times per day. Maybe they're the person who avoids stepping on sidewalk cracks, okay? They will not step on anything in the pavement, on the sidewalk, in the road that has a crack in it. Or maybe their ritual, their coping behavior is they have to make sure that the door is locked when they leave. Now, I would say that most of us probably make sure that the door is locked when we leave our houses, right? Somebody who has OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, they are not just making sure that the door is locked, but perhaps they are turning the knob 10 times before they leave. Maybe they are tapping their foot and turning the knob at the same time. There are things that have to be done in order for the person who has OCD to move on to the next part of their day. Okay, so there's our door person. All right. This note reads that obsessions and compulsions are considered a problem when such thoughts and activities they interfere with what a person needs or want to do. So they get in the way of everyday life. Somebody that has to make sure that the doorknob is turned just right, that they turned it 10 times before they left, they might not do it just that 10 times. Maybe that first sequence of 10 didn't quite feel right. So they have this notion in their head that they have to walk back to the house after they've gotten into their car to leave, and they have to do it again. So these behaviors, these compulsions, they might get in the way of somebody being on time. And if this happens daily, then they can definitely interfere with what they need or want to do. Okay, now somebody that who has this disorder, they understand that their thoughts and their actions are irrational, but they cannot stop. They have to do it to get on with the next part of their day, to get on with life. Their world will not be right if they don't perform these behaviors. Something bad might happen. I mean, this is kind of what's going on in their head, that if they don't perform these behaviors, then something bad might happen to them or their families. The world is not good with them. Okay, so it is hereditary, so it runs in families. And they say that exposure-based psychotherapy works well because what happens is they have to face these situations that they're afraid of. And so then when they face those situations, just like we learned with phobias, they become less sensitized to them. So somebody might have the person who needs to check the door handle maybe decrease the number of times that they turn the door handle and not allow them to go back and perform that behavior again. Okay, things like that. Okay, so here is the OCD cycle in a graphic. Pause it if you want to look at it a little bit further. Okay, and a few graphics to help us understand or demonstrate these ideas and these feelings that somebody has with OCD. Um, People that have obsessive compulsive disorder are occupied with order and symmetry. They like things just so. And if things are not perfect, if they're not lined up, then they will make sure that they look right to them. Okay. All right, so there's our door handle person. What else did I? Um, so here's the idea that they're occupied with order and symmetry. Oftentimes somebody that is diagnosed with OCD has a certain number that they have to hit as far as performing that coping behavior. So earlier I was using the example of 10 times, maybe it is 3, something like that. I had a student once that was diagnosed with OCD, and she said that her thing was numbers. And so, what she meant by that is the examples that she gave is that she would set her alarm clock for, say, 6 o'clock. Well, she had to get out of bed if it was on a 0 or a 5. Um, it could not be in the middle of the clock or any of the minutes. So it had to be a 5, a 10, a 15, or a 20. It could not be any of the minutes in between. She didn't drive at that point in her life, and so her brother took her to school. And if he had the volume on the radio on a number she didn't like, then and I don't remember what the number was, I'm sorry. But she would turn the volume knob or the button to a number on the volume that she did like. Okay. Some people that are diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorders, they actually have a hoarding issue. So the things that they have might be organized, but they have a very, very hard time of getting rid of things. Okay, so I think that is the end of OCD. It is. And so the number that I wanted to give you with obsessive compulsive disorder is Americans are diagnosed with it, 2.2 million people it affects in a given year. And with this one, men and women are affected equally. Okay, so here we go with our last one, and this one is post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. Okay, so the definition of PTSD is a person who has experienced a traumatic event feels severe and long-lasting effects from that trauma, and it overwhelms their sense of reality, their ability to cope. So we're going to talk about flashbacks in just a second, but people that can be diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, you see it commonly with people who have been involved in wars. That's the veterans part. Survivors of natural disasters, someone who has experienced a rape, experienced or witnessed an assault. Okay, so there's a graphic for PTSD. Now, symptoms include involuntary flashbacks. Now, a flashback puts that person back into that traumatic event. So, in their mind, they are reliving this experience again. Now, the flashback can be triggered by everyday sort of noises, like maybe somebody has slammed a door, it could be a car backfiring. For veterans of wars, fireworks, the sound of fireworks can be very traumatic, okay? It can happen in their nightmares, so they can be sleeping and their dreams make them relive the trauma. I had another student who once explained that he had an uncle who fought in the Vietnam War, and there were too many times where he had woken up. Well, his wife had woken up with her husband's hands around her neck, and so it became too dangerous actually for them to sleep in the same bed because of these recurring nightmares that he had. Okay, insomnia, so not being able to sleep is another one, and they often feel guilt. So somebody who was involved in war, somebody who fought, a veteran, might experience survivor's guilt. So they lost all of their brothers, and now we have women, so sisters fighting in war, and they feel like they should have died with them. That's survivor's guilt. Okay. All right, so people who are exposed repeatedly to trauma, they are more likely to develop the disorder. So I included this infographic with some numbers there. And that is going to end the video lesson number 3 on the rest of the anxiety disorders. I hope you learned a little bit of something about anxiety disorders. Please let me know if you have questions.